Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org. Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, proud to stock fresh produce, tender cuts of meat, and more from Colorado farms and local small businesses. You support local when you shop at Safeway. Shop at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.
The glory days of the Grand Junction Humpback Chubs are coming to a close. The minor league baseball team, more widely known as the Grand Junction Jackalopes, said yesterday it will move by next season. The league has not yet announced where. It was just this summer when the Jackalopes decided to use a local fish, the Humpback Chub, as a mascot for some home games, thanks to a fan's suggestion. Limited edition merchandise for sale at the team store is now time limited. I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, your choices for governor just got more interesting with a prominent Republican joining the race.
Democrats are already issuing statements about Kirkmeyer, linking her to President Trump.
Then the Broncos announced plans to build a new stadium, what it'll cost you, and how your experience there will change.
The owners have promised that they would keep the roof open to the elements for football games.
Plus, after lots of talk about the idea, one city is finally converting an office building into affordable housing.
Yes, there tends to be a lot of demand.
It's Wednesday, September 10th. Here's the news in Colorado today. You'll have the chance to vote for a new governor next year because Jared Polis is term limited. Last night, Republicans added their highest profile candidate so far. State Senator Barbara Kirkmeyer announced her run.
I've got the guts, the determination, the entrepreneurial spirit, and the vision to create a future and a better future for Colorado.
Yeah! CPR public affairs reporter Benta Birkeland is here to explain what you need to know about Kirkmeyer and who she's trying to beat out on the Democratic side. Benta, what's the top line on who Kirkmeyer is in Colorado politics?
Kirkmeyer is in her second and final term in the state Senate. She's from Weld County, and before she was a lawmaker, she was a Weld County commissioner. She sits on the powerful Joint Budget Committee. That's the 6-member body that crafts the state budget. It makes her one of the most powerful Republicans in the state house, and she does a lot of bipartisan work. It's already a crowded GOP primary at about 20 now, including Kirkmeyer, but the candidates have largely been people not as widely known. Kirkmeyer ran for Congress in the Congressional District 8, narrowly lost, so she does have pretty good name recognition. There are 2 other Republican lawmakers in the race, though.
What are the issues that have been important to her in her career? And do any of those appear to be issues she'll focus on in her campaign?
She's a high-profile voice inside the legislature pushing for fiscal restraint and efforts to lower the cost of living. She's also worked with Democrats in recent years to end a long-standing shortfall in state education funding. I imagine that will continue to be a priority. She's supported the Trump administration and the One Big Beautiful Bill law and criticized Democrats in charge of state government for failing to live within their means. But like I said, she does work with Democrats on a lot of things, and she doesn't go out of her way to be pro-Trump and praising Trump the way some of his MAGA-based supporters do. She does avoid criticizing the president, and when you ask her about what's happening nationally, she usually redirects it back to the state and state priorities. That's a pretty savvy approach with an electorate that is pretty strongly anti-Trump over the last 3 presidential elections.
There are 2 very prominent statewide officials already part of the Democratic field as well. Benta, could you remind us of what's happening there and catch us up on who wants to succeed Polis?
Yes, we have U.S. Senator Michael Bennet and Attorney General Phil Weiser. Those are the biggest names. Bennet has been a U.S. Senator since 2010. He's in a very powerful position. He's made a lot of connections in those 15 years, and it's a long time for him to endear himself to many people in the state, in the political establishment. Weiser is earning a lot of praise from progressives lately for his efforts to fight back against President Trump as Attorney General. He's filed a number of lawsuits and been very engaged, particularly when it comes to immigration. Democrats are already issuing statements about Kirkmeyer, linking her to President Trump and unpopular decisions from his administration. Trump did not do well in Colorado in the last election, so I think that's a theme we will see in this race frequently, trying to link Republican candidates to what's happening at the national level.
CPR's Benta Berklin, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
The Broncos announced yesterday they plan to build a new stadium just about a mile from their longtime home at Mile High. Mayor Mike Johnston is calling it a huge win for Denver.
It's about $300 million a year of economic impact on the city right now from the Broncos. With the new site, we think that easily goes over $1 billion of economic impact because there's a whole set of opportunities that you can only get access to with this kind of structure.
This ends months of speculation about whether the Broncos plan to stay in Denver proper or move to a suburb, but it raises new questions about the costs, what will happen to the old site, and whether a new stadium is even necessary. We're going to sort through all this with Denverite editor Andrew Kenny. Andy, let's start with the cost. Will taxpayers be paying for this new stadium?
No, not directly. Mayor Mike Johnston has said the city will not spend any public dollars on the stadium itself. That would be a big change. People may remember Mile High was built mostly with sales tax dollars from Denver and the surrounding counties. Those kind of tax-funded stadiums have gotten a lot less popular lately, and so the owners of the Broncos are looking at spending billions of dollars privately raised to build the stadium. However, the city could still spend taxpayer money. The city of Denver could spend taxpayer money around this new stadium on stuff like bridges and roads and other infrastructure.
Where is the new site?
It is in southwest Denver in this place called Burnham Yard. That's one of the last big undeveloped pieces of land in the center city. It's a former rail yard. The state currently owns it. The state would sell it to the Broncos in this deal. People living around this site, it's kind of like tucked into the curve of I-25. They have hoped for decades to see it get used for something besides being a dusty old rail depot. People have wanted housing, retail, parks, schools. All that's been bundled into the plans over the years. So we talked to some local activists yesterday, and they were kind of split. And this is being pitched as a mixed-use development, so it'd be the stadium and housing and stores and all that. The Broncos have promised there's going to be this big community planning process. It'll take a long time, and they'll listen at least to what the neighbors want.
Before we get too far into the details of the announcement, is it too soon to make this announcement? It seems like the Broncos are hedging a bit. They're calling it their preferred location, not saying definitely that they are building it there. What's the holdup here?
I don't think it's too soon because this has been the subject of a lot of speculation. It's been like an open secret that Burnham Yard is the main site they're looking at. So by making this announcement, they're really saying, Denver, you are it. But they also leaving themselves a little exit door in case something goes totally sideways. They do have to get through this whole planning process. They have to get approvals from the city. Not completely clear what all those steps will look like, but it's going to take a little while before this thing's done.
Assuming that it does happen, what happens then to the current stadium?
So the current stadium, Bauer Field at Mile High, sits on land that pretty much belongs to the city and is being leased out to the team right now. That lease ends in 2030. So as soon as 2030, that property could go back to city control. And that's another big piece of land. So they could do a lot with it. Mayor Mike Johnston said we get to, quote, reimagine the Mile High Stadium site as a thriving community in West Denver. And it could be a pretty big marquee project for Mike Johnston, assuming he's still in office at that point.
You mentioned the new stadium will cost the owners billions of dollars. What could that possibly look like?
Yeah, it's funny because the old stadium doesn't look that old. It's a pretty modern looking design, but the owners say is that it's coming up on 30 years old, which is these days considered old for a stadium, and they want to install this fancy stuff that will meet the expectations of the modern fan. They haven't really said what that would be, but if you look at like the new SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles, like they have this insane video board that's like a mile long practically that loops around the whole stadium. One big thing that they would want to add is a retractable roof.
Wow.
Which is weirdly controversial for football fans. Old Mile High has no roof. If it's snowing, it's snowing. You can't do anything about it. A lot of Broncos fans take pride in that suffering that you go through at a football game. What the owners have said is a retractable roof would make them able to use the stadium year-round, because now you can host big events like, say, the Final Four or like a big wintertime concert. The owners have promised that they would keep the roof open to the elements for football games, so they'll let you continue to suffer in the cold. This would all take, by the way, about 6 years. We're looking at 2031 for an opening date at the earliest.
So the countdown is on. Denverite editor Andrew Kenny, thanks.
Thank you.
One of the big ideas to create more housing and cut down on homelessness is to convert office towers left empty by the pandemic. One of those conversions is now underway in Metro Denver. And now you're going to get a peek inside with CPR business reporter Sarah Mulholland. Sarah, where is the site you visited?
Well, the building is in the Denver Tech Center on South Monaco, and it's being transformed by developer Shea Properties into 143 affordable apartments. So the plan is to open it next June, with units reserved for households earning between 30% and 70% of the area's median income. Inside the building has been taken all the way down to the studs, which made it easier to sort of visualize what the new apartment units will look like, because there's no cubicles left.
So the kitchen will be on this side right here.
A lot of windows.
Oh yeah, really light.
The units will vary in size, which will make it easier for larger families to move in when it's all said and done. There'll be units as big as 4 bedrooms.
There's some talk that sometimes it can actually be cheaper and faster to convert an old office building. Was that the case here?
You know, I think at this point it's a little too early to tell, because there haven't been any actually completed in recent years. We do know that Shea bought the property in April for $12 million, and that is cheap for the size and age of this building because it's been vacant for about 7 years. But one point Peter Colshaw, the developer's executive vice president, made is that even though the property was cheap, you do have to invest a lot up front, which is the flip side to cheap real estate.
You're investing a lot in plans, not knowing if you're going to get all of that financing. And so it's a high-risk proposition for a lot of developers.
Colorado voters did approve an affordable housing financing fund. That was back in 2022. Did that help with this project?
It did. Shea received about $4 million in tax credits from the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority for this project, and that money is coming from the fund that voters approved a few years ago.
Let's talk more about what a conversion can look like. Was this just a standard office building before?
Yeah, so the building is 4 stories high. There's lots of glass, and it's surrounded by parking lots. And inside, they've had to adjust things like the HVAC, which is why the age of this building is so important. It was built in 2001, which means it was easier to convert to modern safety and energy efficiency standards than something built in like the 80s.
So it's like a jigsaw puzzle of finding where you can bring the plumbing down, which then relates to where you can put the bathroom, which then relates to where you can put the sink, and then add to that all the air conditioning.
So the conversions are complicated, but Colshaw says despite these complications, office buildings allow for some unique features you might not find in other modern apartments, which can be appealing for renters.
One of the nice things about converting an office building to residential is you get higher ceilings. So these windows are 10 feet high. You don't get that in most apartments are less than that, so this is going to feel very spacious.
Where else are there plans to convert office buildings?
There are 9 proposals in Denver, but this is the first one to break ground since the pandemic. And the idea is also expanded to Colorado Springs, where the Parkside office suites are being transformed into 32 micro apartments.
And after visiting this one in Denver, do you think these conversions will make a dent in our housing shortage?
Well, there's definitely lots of interest, but there's no complete project. So I'd say we're still in wait and see, even though this idea has been talked about for several years now. The city of Denver is starting to put additional funds into these conversions, so that should definitely help move things along.
CPR's Sarah Mulholland, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for listening to Colorado Today. This podcast is listener-supported, and if you make your donation soon, you might win a trip to the Dalmatian coast of Croatia. See the link in the show notes or come to cpr.org for more details. You have a week to enter and to imagine yourself at a wellness resort and wine tasting with a view of the turquoise Adriatic Sea. Good luck. I'm Bazi Kanani. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway. Shop online and get $30 off your first online order when you use code SAVE30 at checkout. Get the same prices, deals, and rewards as in-store. Get started at Safeway.com or the Safeway app.